Good overnight. Welcome on in to the overnight edition of From Day One as I cross my fingers that this goes well. Because the ISP is rating me at only 72 kilobits for an upstream at the moment, and I can't get hold of any of them until morning to try to fix it. But with that said, let's at least try to bring Art Bell with us in the overnight as we continue on with Josh Grinley and John with the Flat Earth debate.
Have you ever read Zetetic Astronomy by Dr. Robotham?
No, I'm afraid I haven't read that.
Well, you ought to read it because there's a lot of great proof. And you want to talk about science. Okay, let's talk about the North Star Polaris. How does the North Star Polaris maintain its alignment? And, people say it's hundreds of years, or some people say it's thousands of years. Some people say, oh, well, it changed once. But the point is...
No. Can I just jump in here?
Sure.
Polaris does not maintain its alignment. The Earth is a spinning top, and if you remember as a kid playing with the top on a tabletop, you pull the string and it spins, and it's kind of stationary, and then it starts to wobble. Remember how that worked? It wobbles, and then eventually the top falls over on your desk or tabletop. That's exactly what the Earth is doing. It's a spinning gyroscope, and because it's spinning, it's wobbling, it's precessing, we call it. The reason it's doing that is because the moon is producing a gravitational pull on the Earth.
Wait a minute.
This is simple physics.
Star Polaris?
So the North Star doesn't always stay over the North Pole. It's moving on a circle, and it moves around every 26,000 years.
No. Okay.
So it does, John.
You're talking about the precession of the equinoxes, but...
That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's what makes the North Star no longer the North Star. The ancient Egyptians didn't have a North Star to line up north on building the Great Pyramids. The North Star was way off. Polaris, rather, the star was there, of course, but it was no longer lined up with the spin axis of the Earth. All of this is well known.
So you were around back then.
We know exactly where Polaris was 5,000 years ago, too.
You do? Okay.
Yes, we do.
Just like you know the Earth is a globe. Okay.
No, John. The difference is I can measure it. I can measure where Polaris was.
But you can't measure. There's no curvature.
And I can measure that there is curvature.
There is
so can you
curvature.
if you go out in an airplane and measure distances on your so-called flat plane. They won't be consistent with a flat plane because it's not a flat plane. It's a spherical globe.
Can I ask you a question, please? I want to ask a question. When you fly...
I'm running out of time here, Art, but let's have a few more questions,
all right,
I guess.
Well, this is my question. When you fly from Los Angeles to, let us say, Hong Kong, and you measure the distance, that we can do scientifically. I hope John believes we can do that scientifically. Do you, John?
Well, of course you can measure distance.
Okay, and if you take the Great Circle route to get there, it's not as far. How come?
The Great Circle.
Yeah. In other words, if you go north and then around, as if, it's a globe, a ball.
Well, because you got to understand, the flat Earth is sort of like the globe model, but it's wrapped around the North Pole. You have to study the model to understand it. You're trying to apply globe model laws and maps to the flat Earth map. Yes, you got to understand.
I'm just talking mileage here.
Mileage, okay. Yeah. Well, then how can you explain that you can fit the Canada twice into the length of Russia on the standard maps?
I don't know. I'm asking you a question and you're responding with another question.
Exactly. That's the point. I mean, you can't go by the maps that you're looking at because they're inaccurate.
Well, John, they can be confirmed by going out. If you wanted to go out with a ruler stick, you can measure what your map should be telling you. That's the way maps are constructed. You probably know all about GPS. I don't know if you have a cell phone, but that's what tells you where you are, again, on the surface of a globe.
Are you familiar with
If your theory were right, and you're living on this distorted flat plane, GPS wouldn't work. Nothing would work.
Are you familiar with Nikola Tesla's towers that he invented? I think it was in the 20s or 30s or whatever, where it was basically wireless communication.
John, you're doing it again. The question...
That's where radio communication began. That's precisely what's used to...
Triangulation.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I know.
Cell phone towers.
Yes, of course, John. That's exactly what we're talking about. But
we don't even. Why would we need satellites if we can bounce radio waves off the ionosphere anyway?
Oh, you know what,
John,
gentlemen, Doctor, hold tight. We're at a break.
Precise positions that way.
I have to break.
The atmosphere disturbs the signal to begin with.
Hold it right there, gentlemen. I have to break. This is radio. I have to deal with time. This is midnight.
Coming to you at the speed of light in the darkness. This is Midnight in the Desert with Art Bell. Now, here's Art.
Here I am. We've got with us John. He's anonymous beyond that name for business purposes, and Dr. Josh Grinley. And we're discussing whether or not the Earth is flat. It's been pretty spirited, I would say. I would like to get a couple more points in. I can sense the doctor's getting close to bailing, but a couple of more points. And for example, here's one. John says, how can the upper atmosphere be adjacent to the vacuum of outer space?
Gravity, John. Gravity pulls the atmosphere, keeps it on this round globe. Why is it round? Because that's the equilibrium shape that a mass must assume. That's why stars are round, spherical. They're not pancakes. So all of this we understand, John. But again, I'm not trying to sound like I'm belittling. I hope I don't convey that. I'm trying to convince you, John, that you ought to lighten up here and understand what the whole world of science has arrived at, not just recently, but over hundreds of years, and with such incredible discovery in the last decade or two. Those Hubble images we were talking about. I could also talk about X-ray images that we have from the Chandra telescope.
Gravity, and you got gravity,
and you think they're all fake. This is just so discouraging.
Well, everything that does seem to be proof, Doctor, you're right, seems to be then adjudged to be fake by John. And John sounds like such a bright guy that I just can't figure how he obviously believes this.
That's why I was asking what happened 6 months ago. I mean, it's great to have a moment of truth and say, my God, what is the world I'm living in? That's fine. I'm all in favor of that. But to deny rational thinking and thousands of years, beginning with the Greeks, who I keep coming back to, they're so amazing what the Greeks did. But all of modern science, and you've got it all cooked up to be a giant hoax. It's just
so you say that it's the magic of gravity that keeps the atmosphere.
Not magic. There's no magic of gravity at all. Isaac Newton taught us what gravity is, and we now understand it in
Isaac Newton
glorious detail.
Okay, hold on. Now, first of all, gravity was theorized in order to account for the fact that we're not flung from the spinning Earth at 1,000 miles per hour towards the east near the equator. Okay, gravity is a theory to prove the globe model. Now, you're also saying that...
what do you suppose keeps you, sitting in your chair instead of floating off if there's no gravity? I mean...
Well, there's no need for gravity on the flat stationary Earth that we dwell on.
I see.
We're not spinning at 1,000 miles per hour, so you don't have to account for that outward thrust generated by the spin.
Okay.
It's the simple laws of density or buoyancy. that causes, heavier, denser objects to find their way down and lighter, less dense objects to find their way up. It's the natural order of things, and there's no need for gravity to explain the law of physics. What goes up must comes down on the flat.
Well, really? Well, then, I mean, why do things come down? If I throw a ball in the air, why does it have to come down? Something's pulling it down, John.
Well, it's more than likely, sir. It's electromagnetic, but gravity has never been proved, sir. It is a theory.
Oh, gravity's been proved time and time again, and
No,
of course
sir.
It began with Newton.
No, sir.
We're on the verge, John. If you don't like the proofs of gravity so far, in probably the next 5 years, there will be a very major discovery that will come from astrophysics, but from physics really, and that is of waves of gravity. Gravitational waves, which
that have never ever been detected, even though
that's right. But there now is an enormous big telescope in the state of Washington, and another one in Louisiana, and another one in Italy, and in Europe, and those gigantic gravitational wave telescopes are now almost sensitive enough to detect the gravitational wave sources that we have proven are out there.
Gravity is a theoretical fantasy that was dreamed up by...
Well, John, I don't think that's what anybody else but you and your colleagues and your...
No, that is what it is. That's what gravity is.
Nature.
Gravity was a theory designed or theorized to explain the globe model and why we're not flown from the face.
No, that's not what gravity was designed to do at all. It was designed to explain the fact that objects fall. That has nothing to do with the globe model.
Okay, then what is keeping us pinned? Then what is keeping us pinned to the Earth while we're spinning 1,000 miles per hour?
Mass of the Earth, John. That's what gravity is due to. It is because the Earth is not a flat plane. It is mass that weighs.
Gravity is supposedly due to the mass of the Earth warping space-time.
No, John. You're getting confused. You're jumping ahead to Einstein. Warping space-time has nothing whatsoever to do with the Earth's gravity. It's a very teeny tiny effect, barely measurable. It's been measured. It's not that tiny. But Newton, of course, had no conception of this. It was 300 years until Einstein told us and instructed us in his brilliant way about the warping of space and time. But that we haven't talked about. If we were talking black holes, which is what I normally like to think about, we'd be having fun discussing warped space-time. But gravity on the Earth, no need for any of that. The apple falls from the tree. That's what Newton observed and said, "My God, how could this happen?"
Because the apple is denser than the air above it. It's not as dense as the ground below it. So that's where it finds its way to, just like everything else. It's natural. It's the natural order of things.
No, then if that were true, John, then we would have everything. If everything were density dependent, all of our laws of motion would be totally different. Airplanes wouldn't fly. Motors wouldn't work. You're defying everything that's around you.
Airplanes wouldn't fly without gravity, with all due respect. That's ridiculous. Airplanes fly due to barometric, or the pressure beneath the wing being different than the pressure above it.
But what I'm saying is that when you're denying gravity in Newton, you're denying all of the physics, the very simple physics that goes with that, which is
it's all just theory.
Devices that you are using in your everyday life. You're denying science.
I'm denying a theory that was dreamed up by proponents of the globe model that is demonstrably false.
Again, the globe model had nothing to do with it. It really didn't.
The globe model
it was a conceptualization that Newton may have used. He didn't have to.
The only reason you need gravity is to explain the fact that you're not flown from the Earth at 1,000 miles per hour near the equator due to the outward thrust generated by the spin of the Earth. That's what gravity was theorized to defend the globe model.
That's not, John. I'm sorry, you're wrong. That's not what gravity was theorized to deal with.
So you're changing history now.
No.
John, you weren't
history. John, understand what Newton did. Read the Principia and understand. Newton was trying to explain acceleration, force, and mass, and gravity was his way of understanding and explaining why we are bound to the ground that we're standing on.
That's a theory.
And with a certain acceleration. the very simple laws of motion that Newton so brilliantly derived explain to umpteen decimal places why objects move as they do. It's all because of a force, the gravitational force, acting on them, that objects are accelerated when they fall at 32 feet per second per second.
So do you agree that inertia is possibly an electromagnetic force?
No, I don't at all. Inertia has nothing to do with electromagnetic forces. It has to do with the state of matter as a source of mass that has inertia. Force equals mass times acceleration, Newton's famous equation. All of these things have nothing whatsoever to do with the globe of the Earth. They can be generalized to, talk about what happens on a globe, but that's not at all.
So the same, okay, so just so I got this straight, the same gravity that is so weak that keeps me stuck to the Earth, but also keeps the atmosphere from being sucked into the vacuum of space. Okay, that explains it perfectly.
It does. It does.
I was being sarcastic, but okay.
No, I know you were, but it does. It explains it to the T. And it also explains why if you take a steel ball bearing and roll it on a table, and the table is tilted, so it is now accelerated as it's rolling faster and faster. All of that, which has nothing to do with the atmosphere of the Earth or the shape of the Earth,
just
only has to do with
momentum,
acceleration and velocity. All of that is explained by Newton's laws. That's what I'm trying to convince you of.
Well, there's
basic understanding of motion.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There are laws like what goes up must come down. I agree that's a law of physics, but I disagree that gravity is simply a theory.
What the source of acceleration is, which is gravity in the case that we're talking about here.
Well,
so what I'm trying to convince you of is that there's a reasoned approach which has been worked out with great minds, the real heroes of science, people like Newton and then Einstein much, much later. And you can't deny these guys. They weren't, it had nothing to do with the Earth being round. Of course, the Earth being a globe, as we know it is, allowed many other things to be explained by the same basic laws of motion and allowed us to get to the moon and to get a spacecraft out to the planet Pluto. All of that wouldn't have been possible without the physics that has been developed and understood over the last 350 years.
So well, he thinks the whole Pluto mission was, fake anyway. So
I know, but it's really tragic, John, because you're missing out on some really exciting stuff.
So, Dr. Grinley,
anybody could have possibly photoshopped. That's the amazing part of it. What's real that stuff NASA's doing is fantastically better than anything.
NASA has been lying to everyone, but anyways, do you agree that even if I was to show you all kinds of irrefutable proof that the Earth was not a spinning globe, that you would agree that you would never change your mind that it was indeed always going to be a spinning globe no matter what?
No, I only go on the basis of measurement and observation, John. It's not
really
okay. It's not that we're bound to some,
Well, I hope that you live up to that, and only you will know, the truth of whether you're actually going to live up to that. But if you go by observation and the scientific method, then there's only one correct answer, and it is not a spinning globe.
Well, John, I'm afraid we're just having a rather pointless argument because you're denying mathematics and fact. And
no, I'm not.
Well, you haven't done any of these measurements. You haven't gone out and done the simple tabletop experiments I was talking about, which tell us that the physics
I can tell you about it. So
is all something we understand. And what you're proposing, beginning with your model for the sun, which is the most fantastic thing that has nothing whatsoever to do with physics, magnetic anomalies producing the enormous luminosity of the sun that is keeping us all warm and alive.
Well,
John,
the celestial bodies, including the sun and the moon and the stars and the wandering stars, the planets, and the celestial bodies are definitely beautiful and mysterious features of our world. It's not a heliocentric model with an infinite universe. Well, the whole model is wrong.
I'm afraid you've just missed out on the last 500 years of intellectual thought, and it's really a shame. I don't know.
Well, either that or his science, maybe his science teacher hit him hard.
It's really sad that you just have lost contact with reality.
Well, I'm sorry, sir, but I could say the same thing. It's been irrefutably proved that the Earth is not a spinning globe, but no matter what,
Well,
until you break the programming and simply look at the evidence with an open mind, you will always dwell on a spinning globe. So,
John, an open mind is looking at data, my friend, pictures, real measurements, not this distorted maps with the North Pole at the center and all this
perfectly visible buildings from over 50 miles away, and planes that somehow have identical durations traveling east and west on a globe spinning to the east. No, but you went through it and you glossed over it. You didn't.
No, I didn't gloss over it, John. You just weren't listening. You weren't understanding.
No, you weren't listening, but okay, we'll agree to disagree on that too.
All right. Well, listen, I want to thank you both. I think we've come, unless we can discuss actual points here, we've come to a stop. John wonders how we can see the same stars overhead in the summer, but also in the winter.
And of course, the answer, John, is we don't. Do you think you see the star Vega overhead in the winter, which we see overhead in more or less June and July? No, we don't. It's on the opposite side of the sun, John. The sun's in the way.
There are stars that should be totally invisible during the entire winter that we can see overhead in the winter, and we can also see them overhead in the summer. There's no way we could ever see the same stars in the winter and compared to the summer, because the sun would be behind, in between those stars in your eye.
That's exactly why we don't see Vega in the winter. You're
one star.
No, lots of whole constellations, John.
No, you don't understand. You should never see any of the same stars in the winter versus summer.
With your model, I guess that's
in the false heliocentric model.
John, look. Do you know the constellation Orion? Can I just talk specific here? You know what Orion is?
I know what Orion is.
It's visible in November and December.
Of course.
All right. We don't see that in the spring. Okay? Precisely for the reason you're saying. The sun is in the way. It's true for every star in the sky unless you're close to the poles. We see Polaris all through the year because it's not in the plane of the ecliptic, but the spin axis is pointing, so we get to see it as a
miracles of science and pretty pictures, right?
What's that?
So Polaris must be traveling millions of miles through space back and forth to maintain perfect alignment with our measly wobbly North Pole.
No, John. No, it's millions and hundreds of millions of miles away.
So that's pretty perfect alignment, isn't it?
No, it's not perfect alignment. I already told you that 5,000 years ago it wasn't aligned over the North Pole at all. The Earth's spin axis is wobbling in space.
So you don't agree that for that thing to be so many hundreds of, however billions of miles away, that there's not a very, very nicely perfect alignment with our North Pole for it to stay directly above it all year long?
John, the Earth is a gyroscope. Its axis is precisely fixed on
the North Pole.
Not on the North Pole. The North Pole
on the North Pole star, the North Pole star.
John, Polaris just happens to be lined up on our North Pole.
You just have
26,000 years from now, it'll be lined up again. So you're not listening to me, John. You're the trouble, John, is you don't seem to understand basic, simple physical facts, which have been proven over centuries of thought and reason and measurement. And what you're talking about has nothing to do with measurement.
No, what you're talking about has nothing to do with reality, sir.
Oh, I see. Well, it's just because you are living in you're back in the age of.
There's no way.
1,000 years ago.
Our Polaris could maintain any alignment with our.
Yes, there is, John.
No, sir.
It's all something that is very simple physics, and I guess I just can't convey it to you because you've obviously never taken any basic science.
John also asks, why don't we have equal 12-hour days and nights all year round?
And the answer is because we're living on a spinning globe. And we have the Earth's axis, this thing that John doesn't seem to understand, that we're pointed fixed in space, like on the celestial sphere, pointing, just happened by pure happenstance to be pointing close to, but not precisely at, the direction of a star that we call Polaris. So because the Earth's axis is tilted with respect to our orbit around the sun, the days and nights, length of the day and the length of the night change. This is all basic 6th grade general science that John should have learned. I hope he did.
You haven't thought it through, Doctor, because if you look at
I teach this to my students. So
you've misled a lot of people, because on an Earth that is spinning a constant speed, you should have equal 12-hour days and nights.
No, that's only, John, look, it's because you don't understand simple geometry. That would only be true, John, if the Earth's spin axis were perpendicular to its orbit around the sun. Then we would have equal days and nights. Correct. But it's not. The Earth is tilted.
The tilt has
That's why we have seasons, John. That's why we have winter.
The reason we have seasons is because
the opposite time that
the sun
is in the southern hemisphere. These are all basic facts.
The sun is traveling in an oscillating flat circle around the magnetic center, which is fixed on Earth.
See, what you've done is you have this hopelessly contrived, complicated wheels within wheels picture, which is what Ptolemy and the ancients thought was going on, because there was no understanding of physical reality. We now have something that we understand perfectly, and we teach it to our 6th graders, and you should have learned this way back when. And it doesn't require magnetic anomalies.
I know the
complicated machines. So what I'm trying to convince you of is that the beauty of science, and that we have a really complete understanding of this, is a remarkable intellectual achievement. There's no fakery. NASA's not full of
science. With all due respect, is not science. What you call science is looking at pretty pictures and trumping what is measurable and verified.
Pretty pictures are just a wonderful byproduct. What I call science is truth and understanding reality. What you are doing is inventing a reality which goes back to the, as I keep saying, the sort of Ptolemaic view, wheels with wheels, magnetic anomalies, all of these things that are contrived realities to make things consistent.
The contrived falsity is the globe model, and anybody can verify that we indeed live on a flat, stationary plane.
I think we've gone as far as we can go, because you're.
Well, I've still got 9 more points to make, but yeah, if you want to.
Well,
go.
As I told Art, this debate is interesting. It's been fun, and I respect your point of view. I'm not trying to put you down. But what I've tried to convince you of over the last hour and a half is that the real picture that all the rest of the world believes, I think you're in a very small minority, as I'm sure you must realize, and for some reason I'm still fascinated to think about or understand whatever led you to adopt this view at such a recent time scale as 6 months ago. There must have been some remarkable thing that happened.
Yeah, there was. And again, I was simply compelled to look at the evidence and scrutinize both models and draw rational, verifiable conclusions, and I wish you would do the same thing.
Okay, well, John, this is what I do every day. I do verifiable models and
well, by saying that gravity is a proved fact, you are not a scientist, sir.
Oh, John, listen, this gets to be the point where it's just not useful to discuss. It's not just me thinking that gravity is a proven fact. This goes back to
gravity
all of physics. I refuse to. There are points at which I'm sorry.
All right, this is that point. So you know what, Doctor? I'm going to thank. Hold on, John. Hold on, Doctor. I'm going to thank you for being here. I'm going to invite you back so we can do a show on everything that you do know about. And
I think I know everything about what this fellow John is talking about, but I find it very disappointing that somebody who clearly can at least articulate, but not describe very accurately even his theory, although I think I see the broad picture of it. I think just very unfortunate that one can come to such a limited view and perspective of what the real world is.
The irony of that statement.
When one has the natural beauty of what the real world is to understand it right at your fingertips. It's what all of science is all about. You can't just throw it out the window.
No.
And go back to this early primitive way of thinking that we must be on a flat Earth.
It's not primitive.
Well, for it to be true, for what John says to be true, so much has to be thrown out the window, and the rest of it has to be just labeled fake.
Yeah. Well,
no, I don't think everything has to be labeled fake. I think that we've all been misled as an entire species to one specific end, which is to essentially trick us into believing we live on a finite enclosed system with no escape. And they've done a great job of it because even the rational, skeptical, scientific, very brilliant minds of the world are trapped in a matrix of a globe model. And until you can just really...
Why do you... So, John, why do you suppose, millions of people, scientifically educated people, many millions, hundreds of millions really, could all be so completely trapped in this totally false view?
Because it's all done.
Why?
We've been very young. Since we've been very young, it's drilled into our paradigm, and we never ever question it. That's why I'm telling you.
This is what science is all about? Questioning.
No, it isn't, sir, because I've already proved to you in this conversation that the world is flat and stationary.
No, you have not, John.
But then you
may
point
think
to the
you have, but the proof is demonstrably wrong, and I'm not going to go back over it. I've pointed out to you ways that your so-called proof is ridiculous. We can measure distances. We know that we're living on a spherical surface. So we're not going to go back over this again. This is where we started an hour and a half ago.
Sure.
So again, the tragedy is you're just denying intellectual history and thinking. It has nothing to do with being led astray. It's the opposite. It's the exact opposite. What science does is to confront the very primitive ways we could only understand our world back in prehistoric times. What you're proposing is, of course, exactly what everybody thought more or less must be the case. That we're on a flat Earth. It began as on the back of a turtle or God knows what. All of this has taken over tens of thousands of years, but really only over the last 500 years, 2,000 years, again going back to the Greeks, to finally be clarified. And there's no fakery or, misleading thing going on, but which is, of course, what you require to make your theory stand up in light of all the evidence. And when you say
the simple verifiable truth has nothing to do with the globe. The globe is demonstrably false, and in fact, it's preposterous if you scrutinize it.
Okay, at that point, John, I'm sorry, I'm going to sign off because I've tried to, make you aware of the beauty of
you've regurgitated the programming is all you've done.
Well, I think he's done a great job. Doctor, I want to have you back and talk about black holes, pulsars, all kinds of good things.
Okay, well, we'll be happy to do that at some point, but this is quite disappointing to see that there could still be this view out there amongst a small segment of society. I know from what little I've heard of this group, but it just shows that our whole education system still has a ways to go. Although on the whole, it is doing well because most people, everybody, I would say, has generally been taught and not felt that they've been brainwashed or whatever John may be suggesting into some very peculiar view, but instead is the learning of the general scientific realm is there for the most part.
All right, Doctor, I'm going to break it off with you and say thank you, and I want to have you back and talk about all the other stuff, if we can do that.
Okay.
All right, Doctor. Okay. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
All right, so John, we've still got you and time for a final statement from you, John.
Sure, and I appreciate you having me on, Art. It's been a real honor. I'm flattered. I disagree with the doctor, and I think he's certainly a very smart, intelligent person, but I really have looked at this. I've thought about it. I wouldn't be out here shouting from the rooftops that I believe that we live on a flat, stationary plane unless I had scrutinized it, verified it. And unfortunately, even the scientific people of the world are simply unable to even just hypothesize that we live on anything but a globe. And in fact, if you do look at the evidence and scrutinize it, and certain things we can verify and prove, the globe Earth model, the heliocentric model, is indeed wrong.
Okay, well, again, from my point of view, as I listened, and I wouldn't have missed this for all the world, so many things have to either be wrong or fake or just so far out for anybody to grasp what it is that you've been saying. But nevertheless, listen, I appreciate your being here tonight. I appreciate your making the argument. People who have never heard this argument made before probably have their chins on their chests. I appreciate your being here, John. Take care.
Thank you, Art.
Good night. Wouldn't have missed it for the world. Flat or round. Open lines are coming up. Stay right where you are.
For Dark Matter News, I'm Leo Ashcraft. The man who was killed Wednesday by Nashville police after he allegedly went after moviegoers with a hatchet and pepper spray had been committed to a mental institution 4 times. Vincent David Montano was committed twice in 2004 and twice in 2007. Montano had been arrested in Murfreesboro, Tennessee in 2004 in a case of assault and resisting arrest. Police say they have no motive for Wednesday's attack. Montano had an air pistol with him that he aimed and fired at the police in the theater. Such a weapon looks just like a semi-automatic pistol, but fires plastic or BB pellets. Montano's mother had filed a missing report with the Texas Rangers 2 days ago. They had notified the authorities in Tennessee. In the report, his mother, Dennis Pruitt, told authorities that Montano was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia in 2006. From ancient pyramids to military bunkers, there's not much conspiracy theorists haven't seen on Mars. Now, in their latest bizarre sighting, alien hunters say they've spotted a mysterious facehugger crab on the red planet. Since the image was uploaded on Facebook, a number of people have said it looks like the facehugger monster shown in the 1979 film Alien. The crab can be seen in an image taken by the Mars rover Curiosity, which shows a formation that looks like a cave mouth on the red planet. The photo was taken by NASA in July, but recently appeared in a Facebook group, who has the slogan, "They will not tell the truth about Mars." You can take a look at the photo yourself by visiting artbell.com and let us know what you see. Of the 91 metals that we know to exist, only 3 are truly magnetic at room temperature: iron, cobalt, and nickel. This poses somewhat of a problem, as we have to rely heavily on these elements for anything for which we need magnetism, like MRI scanners, computer memory storage, and wind turbines. But what if we could make more of these 91 metals magnetic? That's exactly what a team of scientists led by the University of Leeds has been able to do, turning the non-magnetic materials, manganese and copper, magnetic. Although the effect was fairly weak, the research published in Natural Materials Science is hugely promising, and they think that the method could be applied to almost any metal. Future technologies such as quantum computers will require a new breed of magnetics, with additional properties to increase storage and processing capabilities. This research is a step towards creating such magnetic metamaterials that can fulfill this need. The researchers will now try to enhance the effect in the hope that some of the numerous practical applications can be fulfilled. This is Dark Matter News. It seems like close encounters of the window seat kind are happening more frequently these days. Videos have been released of 3 different UFO sightings near commercial aircraft that have occurred over the past several months, with more undoubtedly unrecorded or unreported. What's causing this sudden attraction of UFOs to airplanes? The most recent sighting has been getting a lot of publicity since it occurred at JFK Airport at New York City while the plane was taking off. The video taken by an anonymous plane enthusiast shows a Virgin Atlantic plane rising in the sky on July 7th and then being overtaken by a UFO seen flying above it. The cigar-shaped object is too close to be another commercial aircraft, and no military jets were reported in the area. The next two sightings took place in England, one from June 12th over Lambourne, England, showing an airplane passing by a UFO, and the third sighting was made by a passenger inside a plane flying over Liverpool. There's been no definitive identifications of any of these UFOs seen accompanying or passing the planes. Commercial and military pilots admit they see a lot of UFOs, but sightings by passengers and ground witnesses are less frequent. So what do you think these objects are? Why are they hanging around airplanes? Check out the photos and videos at darkmatternews.com and let us know your opinion. I'm Leo Ashcraft for Dark Matter News.
That was Radio Gold, or as one caller said not long ago, Radio Platinum. If anybody ever tells you the Earth is flat, you're going to want to refer them to that 90 minutes of radio that we just did. It was remarkable from so many different perspectives. One, it was an example of a highly credentialed man putting up with 90 minutes more than I thought he could possibly take. Number two, it was an example of somebody who's obviously very bright, named John, not his real name, because he didn't want to be known as a flat earth guy, in business, and that's fine, but he was obvious, he had a pretty decent level of intellect, right? Didn't he? He was pretty smart. He was arguing a lot of points that you had to be reasonably well educated to argue, even if you're wrong. And so the big question is, what happened to Jim? How could he so fervently suddenly believe what he apparently believes? I blew right through a break so we wouldn't have to stop and we could get the full 90 minutes in. And I'm telling you right now, you've got to point this 90 minutes of radio out to somebody you know. We're going to open lines. And here are the numbers. The public number is area code, it was some hour and a half, area code 952-225-5278. 952-225-5278. Now, we also have Skype, and I invite you to call us for free from virtually anywhere in the world by Skype. North America, America and Canada can call by calling us at MITD 51. That's, MITD as in midnight in the desert 51. People outside the United States and Canada can call by dialing MITD 55. MITD 55. Best way to call, so everybody loves your call because you'll sound great. If you've got an iPhone 6 or an Android of some sort, put these in so you can dial anytime you want, because you never know when you're going to hear something that so frustrates you that if you don't call, you'll explode. The last 90 minutes were, frankly, a lot like that in every way. Evan, I'm going to put you on the air on Skype. Hello.
Hi, Art. How are you doing this evening?
Well, I'm recovering.
Recovering, yes, yeah. Yeah, well, I got to ask you, is that guy actually for real?
Oh, no doubt about it. I just finished saying it. John was obviously a bright guy, and something happened to him. I mean, like a science teacher smacked him with something hard, or I don't know what happened.
Opened his mind too much, it fell out.
I don't know.
Sorry, yeah. I was just going to relay an experience, actually. The city I live in here, I don't know if you're aware of the phenomenon or not, but you know the loud booms?
Oh, yes.
You know what I'm talking about? We in here, I live in Calgary, Alberta. In the particular neighborhood I'm in, there has been for about the past 6 years now, almost probably about at least a couple of times a day, a series of loud booms going off.
Man, we're hearing all about it.
Yeah, no, but it's been they're doing local research into it as well, actually. They put some research into it. If anyone wants to Google Ranchlands Calgary noise, there's a study they've been doing on it. In 6 years, they still can't figure out what's causing it.
No idea? No theories?
Not at all. They involve the local university. Everything I honestly couldn't tell you.
Well, there are mysteries within science, and this clearly is one of them. A lot of people think they're connected to earthquakes. How about that one?
Yeah, well, it's food for thought anyways. Thank you very much for taking my call. Pleasure to speak to you.
Well, thank you for making it. And I want to report very quickly before we move on something that we've been talking about for years. HAARP. You know about HAARP? The High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program? Guess what, folks? It's going to transfer from military into academic hands next month. That's right. The military is giving up HAARP. After a swell of support last year from the scientific community and intervention by Alaska versus Senator Lisa Murkowski, plus a lot of uncertainty before that, the U.S. Air Force laid its plans to shutter the ultra-high-power HAARP and demolish it. Now, the University of Alaska Fairbanks has won a bid to assume ownership of the facility near Gakona. That's going to happen on August 11. Now, I'm a ham operator, and a lot of ham operators think that our government, while it had HAARP in its hands, screwed up our ionosphere big time. So now it's going to pass, and actually the ARRL, the organization that represents amateur radio, David Sumner, has written the U.S. Secretary of Defense to urge that HAARP be maintained in its current condition until the UAF Geophysical Institute's proposal process has been completed by the National Science Foundation. He says most of our 164,000 members employ ionospheric propagation of HF radio signals for their communications and technical investigations. Sumner told then Defense Secretary Hagel, ionospheric research, therefore, has great significance and importance to us. And as ham operators, certainly the ionosphere is very, very important. But frankly, Mr. Sumner, a lot of the hams out here think that they really screwed it up. And if there's any hams out there who want to comment on that, you're welcome to. So HAARP passes from government hands into private hands. Then what? Well, because I blew a break in in the last hour on purpose, and I mean blew it. In fact, we blew everything right on through the roof. We'll take that break now, and then we'll continue. From the high desert, this is Midnight in the
Night in the Desert, exclusively on the Dark Matter Digital Network. To call the show, dial 1-952. Call Art. That's 1-952-225-5278.
All right. Open lines, folks. Anything you want to talk about is absolutely fair game. If you have a comment on what you've been hearing, you're certainly welcome to make that. We've got plenty of people wanting to say something, that's for sure. Let's go to Tulsa, Oklahoma on the phones. Hi, you're on the air.
Hi, Art. First-time caller, long-time listener. I just wanted to say two things. One, I absolutely love the doctor, and I would be very sad if we were unable to see him again. He was an excellent guest, and I really enjoyed hearing him, and I really hope we get to hear him talk about deep space pulsars and black holes and everything else.
Sure. And he will come back. He will. We talked about that. He knew what he was facing tonight. I think, he deserves a gold star for even facing off like this on the subject.
Yes, sir. Yep. So the other thing was for John. I don't know if he's still on the line with us.
No, I didn't think that would be fair.
Okay. Yeah. So the deal I would say for him, because he was wondering about airplanes traveling on the globe,
oh, yes,
one direction, the other direction,
right.
And what I would do, I'd say for him a simple experiment he can do to observe the principles himself would be to set in his vehicle and accelerate to whatever the speed limit is in his area. We'll say 65 miles an hour, set cruise control. Take a pencil or a pen and hold it out and drop it. Now, according to what he's thinking, the pen or pencil should fly right straight to the back of the vehicle, not fall down. Because when he realizes that pen is moving at whatever speed the vehicle is moving, it should be easier in his mind to realize, okay, the entire globe is spinning. Mm-hmm. So everything on the globe is spinning at that rate, and yes, everything else is relative to that. And it would be a nice way to illustrate that. I had to explain this to a kid recently, and I actually went through the same thing, but not for flat Earth reasons. The kid was wondering why, if I dropped something, I dropped my book bag on the school bus and it didn't fly, why not? No. Great kid question.
I wonder how many people embrace. I mean, clearly John truly embraced it. Clearly John was not a dunce. He was a pretty bright guy. So you're only left wondering what happened to John.
Well, some of it might just be isolating yourself from other views, because he was really, I hate to say closed-minded, but he immediately shut down anything about math, science, demonstrable measurements, anything from NASA was all a lie.
All fakes.
Once you isolate yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, that does it.
Well, it tells us something about, I don't know what it tells us. It's confusing to me, because on the one hand, he's a bright guy. Even to sit and be able to argue with the doctor, you could tell he was a bright guy, but all twisted up in a way that I can't fathom.
And as I'm not sure how old he was, but I assume we're probably in the same generation.
Sounds like.
I love space, and I'm jealous of your generation. You guys got to see the moonwalk. We have nothing. We shut down our space program. It's a shame. It's a shame.
Well, let me be John for a second. Of course we shut it down. We couldn't keep up that lie for that long.
Oh, yeah. I'll clear the line so you can take the next caller, but I appreciate it, Art. It's been a great show.
Thank you very much for calling. Take care. I had to bunch the brakes up a little bit here. Let's go to, I don't know, somewhere in California, I think, on the phone. Hi, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi, Art. I'm debating whether to talk about this previous segment or not, because there's so much fertile ground to plow.
Oh, I know.
But instead, I think I'll thank you very much for having Preston Dennett on last week. He cleared something up for me that I've been wondering about for like more than 30 years. And if he's correct, what I had more than 30 years ago was an out-of-body experience, but it involved witnessing something from a past life. And that's something that I witnessed was my being executed in an electric chair.
Oh, my.
Yeah, and I figure it was the 30s, maybe the late 20s, or in the 30s, possibly the 1940s.
What had you done?
I don't know. Whatever it was bad enough to be executed.
Well, yeah.
And I witnessed the hood going over the face from my perspective, and I experienced the jolt of the electricity.
So how was it?
It was quick. I will tell you it was quick.
Well, in a lot of executions, it's not. If they don't get everything just right, they've had guys' heads catch on fire. It's awful.
Oh, I know. But in my case, it was
quick.
mercifully brief.
Hmm.
And you had mentioned one of your hang-ups is being afraid. And I tend to think that whatever fear you're experiencing in that sort of experience of OBE is fear that you're bringing with you.
Oh,
and
yes.
just to tell you that there's really nothing there that can harm you other than what you bring along with you to freak you out.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the call. I really appreciate it. Right. Take care. Let's see. Okay. Let's, well, no, let me talk about that fear. A million times I've tried to tell myself, don't be afraid when these things happen. But going back to my most recent experience, you know, the shadow guy, didn't work at all. Absolutely didn't work at all. From the first second I saw him, I was absolutely terrified. So somebody's going to have to teach me how, when these things occur, how when a giant triangle appears over you or a shadow guy next to you, you don't be afraid. Instead, you relax and you sort of white light yourself, I think people say, and, you know, all the rest of it. Let me go overseas somewhere. Will, you're on the air. Hello.
Bell.
Yes, hello.
Hey, how are you going, mate?
I'm doing well. Sounds Aussie to me.
Very Aussie.
Where are you?
Newcastle in Australia, East
right.
Coast.
Good to have you.
Yeah, good to be on. I've followed you for years and years, and yeah, great to get through.
Seems to me like people in Australia are beginning to discover us big time.
Yeah, I tell all my friends, so I've got a few people tuning in.
All right. Hi, people.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, the flat Earth stuff from the first part of the show.
Right.
Yeah, I started seeing videos and stuff on Facebook and YouTube about 12 months ago and thought it was absolutely ludicrous. And then I watched them. They're, a couple of hours long and did my own due diligence. And what I found out isn't too far from what Jay was talking about.
I've got you. Another flat earther.
Another flat earther.
Yes, well, we need to explore how this happened to you. You were exposed, obviously, to flat earth stuff, propaganda, and somehow you became converted. How long a process was that?
Probably about 6 weeks of really scratching my head, and I spend a lot of time outside at night. And
you didn't like scratch it raw or anything, did you? Bleeding, possibly head injury. You sure?
No head injury.
Look here. We're at a break point. I'm going to hold you over. All right? We've got to explore this. I've got to try to understand. There's got to be ways. Hold on.
And with that, we will have to bring that to a close for tonight. Come on back tomorrow for the final section of this episode of Midnight in the Desert. And with that, that brings us to a close. Make sure you do like, share, and subscribe. You be kind to one another. Release the Krakens. As we march along this overnight and every overnight here from day one. Who knows, maybe I'll try to find some more depth and herb stuff for the A part, as we had today. Before, of course, everything went to hell in a handbasket. But until then, again, have a great night's rest. And thanks for watching us here from day one. Have a great night and enjoy your night's sleep. Good night, everybody.